Good afternoon, Mashpee families and community members and staff members. I'm Patty DeBoer, the Superintendent of Mashpee, and I thought I would take this opportunity to walk you through a slide presentation that I used last night to share the learning plans that we've developed for our students for school year 2021. And so let me just share my screen so I can walk you through. So we have been working for quite a while, several months now, on developing our learning plans for school year 2020. We all know that things are going to be a little bit different this year, but they are going to be just as great. And we're going to work really hard to make sure that our students are getting the best education possible. So the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has instructed each of our districts in the state to develop 3 learning plans for this year: a 100% in-person model, a hybrid model, and a 100% remote model. And part of this process has involved a feasibility study that all of the districts have had to do, and that included examining our scheduling, safety requirements, operational and instructional responsibilities, and then one of the biggest pieces of it was to perform a pressure test to determine what kind of space constrictions we had in order to meet the social distancing requirements. So we did that, all of this, and particularly the pressure test at all 3 of the schools. So by the 31st, which is tomorrow, we have to submit to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which we refer to as DESE, a preliminary reopening plan. And then by August 10th, which is very short turnaround, we are submitting a comprehensive plan to DESE. The goals of our plan, and in the forefront of everything that we do, is the safety and well-being of our students and our staff. We also need to make sure that with whatever plan we have developed, that there's equity and access for everyone, for all of our students. And then we obviously are focused strongly on learning and teaching. The guidance from DESE is that we should be working towards a 100% in-person learning model for all students. So that's sort of the gold medal that we're striving to achieve, and then we have to see if we can do that. So this is a linked site, so any of you are welcome to access these documents, but these are the dates you can see on this slide and all of the different guiding documents that we have received from the Department of Education. And I want to emphasize too that the documents that they develop have been created and developed by working with some of the top medical professionals in Massachusetts. So they are advised as well, both from an educational standpoint and also from a medical standpoint. And I'm going to make sure these slides are provided to all of you as well, so you can directly connect to this link. So we have engaged in quite a process to get to the point that we are today. We did send a preliminary survey to parents at the end of June. That was sort of twofold, to provide us with feedback on what the remote learning experience was like from March through June, but also to sort of start to preview some of the thinking that our parents might have and some of the concerns that you have for moving forward. We then developed a planning team for each of the models, and those teams met every Monday during the month of July. And the teams, like it says here, each had about 40 stakeholders, and it was a wide variety of members of our school community and broader community as well. And a lot of time was just sort of spent brainstorming and poking holes in ideas and coming up with as many thoughts to consider as we could. I did share a video a couple of weeks ago to families and staff that tried to explain where we were at that point. We then sent a second parent guardian survey with a little bit more information to help you make a more informed decision, and that information came back. We also sent a staff survey so we could get an understanding of where they were as well in planning for the fall. Part of this process involves making sure that all of our employees have their needs met, and so that involves working with our association. Sorry, phone rang. And we have, so I'm greatly appreciative to the association president, Mary Stickley. We have had multiple meetings and are very close to sort of reaching an understanding of what we need to do to make sure that our staff is safe and that we're providing the best instruction to our students. We have had meetings with the town manager, the Department of Public Works, and again with the association specifically around facilities to make sure that all protocols and practices are put in place that will ensure that our buildings are very clean and very safe. I participate in weekly meetings with the Cape and Island superintendents as well as with another group of superintendents called Old Colony, which is a huge group, just so that we can continue to brainstorm and share ideas and make sure that we are planning in the right way and gathering ideas from each other. The Cape and Islands has a strong desire to stay as cohesive as we can with some of the plans that each of the districts puts in place. We participate in weekly meetings with the Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, and then our leadership team within the district is meeting more than weekly, almost daily, to work on sort of the logistics once some of the bigger items are in place. So we have developed this flow chart that shows sort of in a one-page document where we are at. So we started with the goal of in-person teaching and learning in a very safe environment for all students. And the first test you have to look at is, can we accommodate the 6-foot distancing in all the classrooms? If you answer yes to that, you continue to work towards in-person learning. And if you say no, then you start to plan for hybrid learning. That first test at the middle high school, we found we could not accommodate all of our students and ensure that they were 6 feet apart in our classrooms. So that meant early on in this process, we were looking at a hybrid model for grades 7 through 12. Back to the left side, in-person learning, then the next question is, can we meet staffing needs? Because now we have smaller class sizes. At the Coombs School, the pressure test resulted in, I believe, 11 to 12 students in a class. And at the Quashnet School average classroom resulted in 15 students per class. And so that requires more teachers in order to spread these students out into classrooms. And so the question is, can we meet all of the staffing needs? Yes, you could continue to work towards being in person, and no, you would start to look at hybrid. The other question related to in-person learning is the bus transportation. We did receive guidelines related to that, and it's basically 1 student per seat. They sort of sit at a diagonal window seat, aisle seat, and you are allowed to have siblings ride in the same seat. But that is a huge challenge for us in terms of transporting students in an all in-person model. We do have the buses. We think we have plenty of buses to accommodate that. We do not have drivers for all of the buses. So looking at basically half ridership can present a challenge. So we started to dive into the information that families shared with us during the last survey, as well as all of our bus routes and the siblings on the bus routes and everything we could look at. And if you can meet those guidelines for the bus spacing, you could continue with an in-person model. And if not, you would go to the hybrid. We cannot transport all of our K through 6 students with meeting the requirements for spacing. So where we have landed is that our grades 4 through 6 will be a hybrid model, just like 7 through 12, and we will keep our K to 3 students in an in-person model. This also does include pre-K. They're not shown on this chart because there's generally not busing provided to pre-K. So pre-K to 3 will be an in-person model, which means that students are placed in cohorts, they're smaller class sizes, and that safety practices and protocols are in place. The hybrid week looks like an alternating 1 week on, 1 week off for learning. You have a Mashpee week, which could be called your in-person learning, and you have your Falcon week. Students, again, are placed in cohorts, and these are going to be done based on bus routes, but we are going to also tweak or create bus routes that best fit. So we're looking to ensure that the cohorts are pretty representative of our student body when we are all together. So each cohort will look like it would if we were all together. We will have our safety practices and protocols in place. And the remote week, unlike in the springtime, which we'll talk about a little later, In the remote week, the student will be following the same schedule as his or her in-person learning week. So, and I will talk about that a little later. The remote week will include real-time, face-to-face, and recorded lessons that are delivered by Mashpee educators. And there will be certain populations of students, a small number, who will be prioritized to receive the in-person learning every day. But that is a very small number of students across the district. And if a stay-at-home order is issued by the governor because of possibly a surge in the virus, then all students would be switching to remote learning. And for our K-12 students, they would continue with pretty much what they're used to in that remote week. They'll still be connected to their teacher. And then the pre-K to 3 learning will be also provided by Mashpee educators, and we will be looking at different models that fit better for that age level. This slide, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, just shows the results of the prior parent survey and not all the questions that we asked, just a few. But in terms of households responding, we feel happy with a response rate that was over 50% at all of our schools. Not to say that we want to make sure we capture 100% of our families. And so in the survey that I'll talk about at the end, we will be making sure that we have 100% participation. But as you recall, if you were a person who took this survey, we asked a question about 100% in-person learning, with safety measures in place. Would you send your child? You can see there the responses of 118 families from Coombs and 145 from Quash. Just to caution you, when you look at that being the 69% of respondents said yes, that's just out of those who answered the survey. So that is a distorted percentage if you are thinking about it representing the entire school, because it does not. And then we asked parents if you were undecided with 100% in-person learning for your child, you could give your opinion there. And so you can look at this chart. I'm not going to go over every piece of it, but the blue section was asking the same set of questions if we were in a hybrid model. And you can see the results there. You'll notice that the high school only responded to that section because we know from our pressure test that we cannot accommodate the 6-foot distancing and 100% in-person learning there. And then there were 3 other questions that I chose to include on this chart. We rely on in-person learning in order to work. You can see the data there. I plan to drive my children to and from school because of bus concerns. You'll have that information there. And then I can drive my children to and from school if it helps with busing. That is something that we're going to try to secure a confirmation on moving forward, because that does impact the busing, and we really do need to know if there's a partnership that we can count on between families that are able to do that. So we also did survey our staff. There's some data here on sort of the age range of our staff, whether any staff members have concerns, and you can read that information there. Also, based on the fact that DESE was recommending the 3 models, and given the most up-to-date COVID information for our area, what learning model did staff members feel most comfortable with? And you'll see there, that's the data for the in-person, the hybrid, and the 100% remote. And then we did ask 2 questions with on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being least comfortable and 5 most comfortable. How comfortable are you with a hybrid model of teaching and learning? You can see the data there. And then the same scale being used for how comfortable are you returning to in-person teaching with safety measures in place. And you can see the data there as well. Now with a 5-point scale, you might wonder what to do with those who chose a 3. You can either group the 3 with the 1s and the 2s, and also do the same, group the 3 with the 4s and the 5s. So you would basically include the 3 in both extremes of choice, or you could leave 3 all the way out and measure it that way. So you can look at that data. So with 100% in-person learning model, the Coombs School looks like this information. So the average homeroom would have 11 students. There's a few spaces that are a little larger, so we could possibly have 13. Safety practices and protocols in place. Students are grouped in cohorts. There is the 6-foot distancing frequent mask breaks, and I envision that being almost every hour, and a mask break would be about 10 minutes. If a teacher chooses to take their students outside and spread them out, they don't have to have the mask on. Lunches will be eaten in the cafeteria and the gym. All specials will be provided, so they'll have art, they'll have PE, library, STEM, and art, music. And there will be the one-to-one technology program. In prior years, it was a 1-to-2 ratio at Coombs. We're making sure it's 1-to-1, no devices will be shared. We're also working on a plan that will allow the students to take the technology device back and forth to school, so they would have something at home should we have to switch to remote without a lot of lead time. And as I said before, the bus transportation is 1 student in a seat. Now at the Quashnet School, the average homeroom is 15 students. We have a few spaces that are larger. The exact same everything that I just read for the Coombs School would be in place at the Quashnet School as well. And then, like I've said before, the 100% in-person learning model is not feasible at the high school, so there's nothing there. So this is a picture of the Coombs School. And this is a first grade classroom that has the 11 seats in it as well. It's actually very nice. It's different, but when you go in the rooms, they are much more open. And I know that density is part of the issue when you want to keep your air flowing well. So that's why we have eliminated a lot of excess pieces of furniture that generally are in a classroom. So that's a first grade at Coombs. These are 2 classrooms at Quash. Now I will say that the picture that you're looking at the left, that is the music room space, which we no longer are going to be using as a classroom because we have decided, based on our bus challenge, to go hybrid for grades 4 through 6. So where Mrs. O'Brien is standing is more of a typical classroom where you would expect to see 15 desks in those rooms. But I will talk about the hybrid for the Quashnet School in a minute when we get there, because it actually will not have 15 students in a class. It'll have less. These are 2 classrooms at the middle high school. One is a science lab, one is a history class. The spacing in those classes allows for 10 desks. So you'll see a lot of room in there. But that's how we have to do it in order to ensure 6-foot distancing for our students. And there's also in every classroom an area where the teacher will teach that also has 6-foot distance from the teacher to the students. Okay, so based on our in-depth dive into busing in the last few days, we have landed with a recommendation of a hybrid model for grades 4 through 6. So what that will look like is we will have half of those students attending in person 1 week, and then half of them the second week. And you alternate between an in-person week and a learning week. a remote learning week. Students will be divided into cohorts based on their bus routes. Generally, based on bus routes, there will be some tweaking involved. What's interesting is that, unlike the spring, the remote learners in these grades, as well as 7 through 12, they're going to follow the exact same schedule that they would be following if they were sitting in a classroom with their teacher. So there will be that connection to that classroom will be there every day. And so you may have an opportunity where you are Zooming in and your teacher is providing an explicit lesson that may last 10 minutes. She may have pre-recorded lessons. So there's a lot of variety that you might see in terms of how learning is going to take place. But it is definitely that you will connect every day visually with your teacher for each content area. One thing to keep in mind for in-person as well as remote learning, it must be 5 hours per day. That is the directive of the Commissioner of Education. In the spring, where we were in an emergency mode, he basically cut the school day in half for the at-home learning. That is no longer the expectation. It is a regular school day, except you are going to be learning from home. So the amount of time that we expect you to spend learning is 5 hours. Now that will not be 5 hours totally on a computer, but you need to sort of get your mind wrapped around that between time on the computer and the work that a teacher may assign, you can expect it to take 5 hours. Obviously, there'll be some flexibility on certain days depending on, a family schedule, because we want to make sure our families are able to handle this, but you need to go into it with the knowledge that this is the expectation. Attendance will be taken for all classes, whether you are sitting in the classroom in a school building or sitting at home at your dining room table, participating in a remote week. Everything will be graded. Standards-based grading will be in place for grades 4 through 6 for both your in-person as well as your remote learning activities. And like I had said before, there will be certain populations of students that may be required to be in school all of the weeks of learning. It's a very small number of students across the district. And so it's important to understand that this model will need to be implemented, and it's contingent on finding enough drivers for additional buses and a significant number of parents driving students to school. So we still need help, even with switching our grades 4, 5, and 6 to a hybrid model. So we'll be seeking some input from parents moving forward when you're going to get the survey later today, I believe. So for a district-wide 100% remote model, remote learners, as I said in the last slide, you're following the in-person learning schedule with real-time, face-to-face, and recorded lessons that are delivered by Mashpee educators. Remote learning time is 5.5 hours if you are a middle high school student. That means our grades 7 through 12 students. And you are 5 hours a day for Coombs and Quashnet students. And we do recognize that kindergartners, the younger you go, it may look a little bit different. What your learning activities may involve a lot more movement and play. Students are not expected to be on their devices during all of this time, which I had said before. And then on a daily basis, remote learners will visually connect with their teachers for each content area and course. So for example, if you are a 9th grader and your first class happens to be English at a certain time, you have to log into a Zoom meeting and the teacher will take attendance, and that's the opportunity that you may have for some learning activities or some explicit instruction. Throughout the rest of that class, you will be able to access your teacher as needed, just like in a classroom when students are working independently on applying their skills and knowledge. Those students at home will as well, but you will be able to access if you needed support in anything. And then also there's we'll have the ability to connect students. So you might be partnered, a remote learner with an in-person learner to be working on an assignment together. Attendance is recorded daily for each class, grades are earned, and supports will be provided for our learners and families. This will be a little bit more, I think, a successful experience for everyone involved because we're not sort of landing here in an emergency situation. We will have planning in place. We also plan to be able to provide in-home tech support initially to get people set up, because sometimes it can be a challenge to make sure that everything is set up in such a way that it's not going to interfere or impede with the ease of learning. So we're going to make sure we provide supports for that. So the red note says the above applies to the remote week in a hybrid model for grades 4 through 12. So we have 100% remote model matches with the remote learning weeks of the hybrid model. So they're one and the same. It's just in 100% remote, you're doing all of your weeks as a remote learner without the alternating in-person and remote weeks. And then if a K-3 student chooses to learn remotely, because as you know, we are recommending all in-person, and that actually does include pre-K. So if a pre-K through 3 student chooses to learn remotely and we are following an in-person learning model, the remote learner may be taught by a Mashpee educator or through a district-provided learning management platform. So we don't know for sure if there will be educators who need to be assigned specifically to only remote learners. If that happens, then that's sort of a nice marriage there. If it doesn't happen, we will make sure we provide a high quality education to our pre-K to 3 remote learners, if that's where we're at. So these are the recommendations of the leadership team, and this is informed from the teams that have worked on all of the models. Like I said, the guidance from the Department of Education, our feasibility study, the pressure tests, all of the components have landed us to this point. So for Coombs School, on the survey that you're going to receive today, I believe, parents are going to be asked to choose. You may choose either in person or remote. Those are the only options that students in grades K through 2 are going to be able to choose. And I want to reemphasize, it does include pre-K as well. And then at Quashnet School, the parents will be asked to choose between an in-person or remote model if you're in grade 3, or your child is, or a hybrid or remote model if your child is in grades 4 through 6. So based on what you choose, then we will make sure that your needs are met. And then Mashpee Middle High School can only choose between a hybrid or a remote. So you may have your child in grade 7 through 12 alternate between an in-person week and a remote week, or you could choose to have your child be 100% remote. And again, they would still be connected to a classroom in that model, a Mashpee classroom. So this is just sort of what I just said in terms of what you'll be asked to decide at Coombs School, and this includes pre-K, 100% in-person, or you choose 100% remote. At the Quashnet School, if you're a 3rd grade parent, you choose either 100% in-person or 100% remote. And then if you are a grades 4 through 6 parent, for your child, you would either choose a hybrid learning model or 100% remote. And then just to repeat for Mashpee Middle High School, those parents may choose between a hybrid learning model for their child or a 100% remote learning model. And both of those are Mashpee educators are teaching at the middle high school. We are not using Edgenuity as was used in the spring. So these are our next steps. The district will send an informational video to families and staff this week. This is the one I'm filming now. We will be sharing a FAQ Google site that we have created. And just to show you what that looks like, hopefully I can navigate a smidge here. It will take you right to this site, and all you will be doing is clicking on any of the icons that you see. And we have put questions in there that were provided to us and that were also developed by our planning teams. And then the answers are in there as well. This is a living document. You'll notice here it says under construction. Obviously, we will continue to add more to it. So if you see something that doesn't appear to be addressed, it's probably coming. This is the list we alphabetized the different categories. So hopefully that allows you to search. If you do find that there's not an answer to a question that you might have, make sure that you send something to me so that we can make sure we can get that answered for you. And then the other piece that we have created is a MPS Learning Plan Google site. I'm also going to, remind you here, it's under construction. So when you go in it today, you may or may not see everything that you'd want to see. You'll be like, wow, there's not much in here, but it's coming. And this will be sort of a landing place for learning this year, particularly if we're remote at any time or if you're in a remote week. So what will happen once this is fully developed is you would click on your child's school, and then once you arrive at that landing, I'll just show you for Coombs. So for the Coombs School, there's just some general information here. And just to note, I don't think I said so already, that Commissioner of Education has changed the school year from 180 days being required to 170 days to allow 10 additional days generally up front to allow so teachers can plan and be better prepared for the type of learning that they're going to provide. And so just to let you know, we are working on a draft revised calendar, but it looks like students may be starting either September 15th or September 16th. So that is something families need to plan for. But anyway, so this is the Coombs School. There's information in here. What you'll end up finding is once you click on this, which this is very much under construction, we are trying to put together information that would be helpful if you're trying to figure out what your child's in-person learning day is going to be like. But what I want to emphasize is that when this is fully done, you will be able to click a grade level, you will be able to click your child's teacher, and it will take you to her or his landing page, from which you will be able to do all of the learning that you need to do. It'll be sort of like a one-stop for, submitting work will not have to be done in multiple locations. So we're trying to make it as user-friendly as we can for families, but that is coming, and you'll see the link to this site in the survey, or in the slides that will be in the survey. But just to reinforce that it's coming along. It will be much better populated in the next few weeks. And okay, so we do intend to send out we're calling it a confirmation decision form, and I believe it's going to be ready to go this afternoon. We need you to make your choice. There'll be a question about busing as well on there, and whether you intend to drive your student to or from. So from these responses, we are going to sort of further dive into sort of more of a micro level of our planning. And that means, just developing our cohorts, placing students in classrooms at the lower levels. There's a lot of layers to this. So we really need you to make that commitment. It's not to say down the road or halfway through the year, if you've chosen in third grade, you decided you wanted to be a remote learner, but as the situation changes, you decide, well, no, I could handle being an all in-person learner, that we can accommodate you with that as well. So we just need you to sort of make your choice as of now. And we know that there's a lot of unknowns out there. We just need you to do the best you can. We're hoping we're going to send multiple reminders. This is a short turnaround, really a week. You will be receiving a phone call as we progress through next week if we're not getting a response from a particular family, because we do need to have 100% participation in order for us to create the best plans and also have sort of an accuracy in the planning. Just for your information, we will be submitting a final plan to DESE on August 10th. That's a Monday. And like I said, we're going to continue to work on our to-do list after we definitely adjust plans for any of the data that our families provide us. We anticipate that our staff will be starting on August 31st. And like I said in the last slide, we anticipate students will begin on Wednesday the 16th, possibly Tuesday the 15th. The only reason I'm saying that is it would be nice to have 4 days in that first gathering together to allow for the hybrid model, 2 days for one of the cohorts and 2 days for the other cohorts. And I will emphasize that we're going to make sure we spend a couple of days with a lot of training of our students in terms of the expectations and what we need to partner with them to do in order to make sure everybody is learning and also is safe. So that's going to happen in the first couple weeks of school. We may do some other trainings prior to students returning. We have not sort of totally figured that out yet. But like I said in the last video, I just want to make sure everybody does know that we are doing the best we can. We are working really hard to include all of the information that we can to inform our decision making. I do tend to be more on the optimistic side, and I like the classrooms that I see, reminding you that, we need to let go of what the vision or the expectation of school has been in the past. This is definitely a new adventure. We're all going to be on it together, and we're going to make sure that we provide the best school year for these students, and I'm really confident that it is going to be a great school year. That being said, I do want to make sure we continue to acknowledge and respect family decisions, and so we are here for you at all times to help you make your decisions. So when you get the survey, if you still have any questions and you're like, okay, she's asking me to make a choice, you can send me an email. We can talk you through it. We can figure it out together. Everything is going to be sanitized. We have touch-free faucets, touch-free toilets in all bathrooms. The classroom doors will be kept locked but open, so there will be no door touching required there. When students arrive in the morning, there will be designated doors to spread them out. Those doors will be open, so no student has to be touching doors there. They will be hand sanitizing upon entering the building. When they come and go from their classrooms, when you re-enter a classroom, you're going to apply hand sanitizer as well. We have protocols in place for masks. I think I did mention that students, when they are in school, will be eating in the cafeteria. They are set up as individual desks spaced apart. They will not have to wear their masks. They will have to hand sanitize before and after. Generally, it's you hand sanitize whenever you need to touch your mask. Looks like we're purchasing, I believe, 7 tents that are 30 by 30 that will be installed, 2 at each of the elementaries, 3 at the high school, that will allow for outdoor learning areas as well. So there's a lot of different pieces we are working on to make sure we can think outside the box a little bit and accommodate a really safe learning environment for students that will also be filled with joy and fun and opportunities for socialization, which is something I think is really important for our kids as well as our teachers. We all need sort of to be around our children. It definitely is why we chose this profession. So I'm going to sign off now. I don't know how long I've been speaking, but I hope that you will find this slideshow and sort of my walking you through it helpful. I am hopeful I touched on everything. So I think this Thursday, which is the 30th of July, I'm going to say goodbye, but I re-emphasize that I'm definitely here for you. So any questions, apprehension, anxiety, worry, or something great you want to share that's going wonderful in your family, please share it with us. And I'll take this one quick opportunity to give a shout out that graduation last Saturday was amazing, and for the team from the Mashpee Middle High School that worked really hard to make that happen. I say thank you to all of them, and thank you to the families for the support as well. So everybody take care. Have a great day. Bye.